Welcome, Chiefs Kingdom, to this holiday edition of the Out of Structure podcast. We welcome everybody back. Hope you all had a tremendous holiday and really enjoyed your Chiefs football experience this week. Matt Stagner here with Ron Kopp Jr. as always. Thanks for joining us. Ron, how was your holiday?
Yeah, well, my holiday was predicated around this Chiefs team. The family taking them out to Arrowhead Stadium.
So not good, huh?
Bear in the cold weather. I'm getting to it, Stags. I'm getting to it. Bear in the cold weather, the winds, a little bit of rain. Family had a great time. Got to the parking lot a little early. Took pictures, threw the football around. Ate a little food. We didn't tailgate much. It's cold. I wasn't trying to put them through all that. Got in the stadium early. Got them the hot chocolate. Little Bailey's in it too. Shout out Arrowhead for that. Big group of us. It was about 10, 11 of us total. My wife's side and I. Great day. It really was a great day. And then the Chiefs played football. The Chiefs played football, Stags.
So I'm just looking through the box score here. It looks like the Chiefs defense allowed only 2 field goals. The Chiefs had 2 long touchdown drives. Get a sack by Chris Jones and a sack by Charles Omenihu. You had big plays on offense, 45 yards to Richie James, 24 yards to Travis Kelce, 32 yards to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Patrick Mahomes ran the ball well, 53 yards rushing. I mean, this was probably a good day for the Chiefs, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, Aiden O'Connell didn't complete a pass after the first quarter. How could a team that does that win a game ever?
They held Devontae Adams to 1 catch on 6 targets for 4 yards.
4 yards.
Their best player. And also their other best player wasn't even playing this week. So what could have gone wrong?
That's a great question, Stags. And we were all asking ourselves the same thing when right in front of us, because we sit on the 40-yard line behind the opponent's bench. Right in front of us, we saw 2 defensive touchdowns pretty much in back-to-back plays. And that's when it just felt like this season, that felt like the Mahomes pick 6 really just felt like a deflating thing for the entire season a little bit. And obviously there's a lot of game to go after that. But my gosh, Stags, I mean, we talk about this offense being sloppy. Those 2 plays back to back to open drives after they scored a touchdown on a nice methodical drive. I mean, I am telling you, I have never been more shell-shocked, more discouraged, more disappointed in this team being at that stadium. And that's the thing. They made an effort towards the end. It became, I was having a great time because we were rooting them on for the comeback. But, let's be honest, man. Those 2 plays were gutting, just discouraging. And man, this team really needs to stop doing those sloppy plays if they want to turn it around, or it's just going to be the same story over and over. But yeah, Stags.
Speaking of the same story over and over, this team had 11 offensive drives this week. They basically had 4 3-and-outs. So 3 3-and-outs and 1 5-and-out that went for 8 yards total. So I'm calling it 4 3-and-outs. They had those 2 turnovers for touchdowns. They had 2 turnovers on downs inside Raiders territory, one of them on the 7-yard line. They missed a field goal. They had another interception that was overturned on their final drive. Their running backs had 14 carries for 20 yards. Rashee Rice caught only half of his targets. Yeah, I mean, this is a partridge in a pear tree. I mean, this was everything that could go wrong on offense did.
Yeah, no, I really, sitting there as someone that goes to, a lot of games, like it really felt to me like the worst it has ever looked in the Mahomes era in terms of just how sloppy and ineffective were there. How many times did we see them re-huddle after a play? There was that fourth down play where Pacheco doesn't line up right. Mahomes has to burn the timeout. There were other times where, yeah, again, they're laid out of the huddle and they can't make the right adjustments, or the right, the snaps are a little rushed, or the motions are a little rushed. To be honest with you, it reminded me of a specific game in the 2017 season with Alex Smith, the Bills home game. If anyone's interested, go look it up. I think they scored an opening drive touchdown and didn't do anything else the rest of the game. Alex threw an interception to end the game. And I don't know, for some reason, it's just it reminded it was the most the game has ever reminded me of the before times, the before era, and just with how sloppy the execution was, how lost everyone looked on Christmas Day, man. I don't know. That was just I was very disappointed. I know I keep saying it, but this team isn't supposed to have these stinkers in moments like this where they need a win to clinch they would have won the AFC West at home on Christmas Day if they come out with a good effort, and instead they're 9-6. Still needing to win a game, but they have let the Raiders and Broncos stay alive in this division race, which is crazy to think about, Stags. But I am, we'll get into the nitty gritty, but I'm just letting the emotions out, Stags, because it really was one of the most disappointed I've ever been walking out of Arrowhead, just with the effort and the overall execution from the offense, from the unit that's supposed to be carrying this team, man. That's just frustrating.
Yeah, I was pretty disillusioned as well. Trying to write the winners and losers article, this was one of those weeks where I was just like, I don't even know that you can single out any one part of this offense or even this team overall and say, oh, this guy was the problem this week. There were so many different failures on so many different parts. Pass protection breakdowns. Wandy Morris really struggled. You had, again, poor efficiency out of the receivers. You had MVS leading the team in receiver snaps and getting one target and not catching it. There was just so many mistakes and so many failures. If you read the winners and losers piece on arrowheadpride.com, you'll see I was like, forget it. The winners of the defense, losers of the offense, special teams and coaching. It just really was a total team effort. The only thing that you can hang your hat on in this week was the defense up until they absolutely had to get a stop in that final drive, and they weren't able to do so. So it really was a collective effort. They really came together for the holidays, this team.
Well, no, and Jeff Schwartz, I know we talked about it pre-show. He had a tweet that kind of pretty much encapsulated it, in terms of what kind of is going wrong with the Chiefs offense, and it's just, Andy Reid talks about it in press conferences, and it drives everyone crazy because it sounds like the same thing over and over. But he just says, hey, we're just a tick off. And he says it so frustratingly, right? Like, Andy is not happy to tell you that they're just a tick off. But they are. But, Jeff Schwartz put it pretty good. This was his tweet. And he had a string of tweets, but I'll just say the one. A wide receiver is open, but the right tackle is beat, so Mahomes can't get the ball there. The protection is good, but no one is open. The protection is good, and the receiver doesn't understand where to settle in the zone. Protection is good, and ball sails on Mahomes. The left tackle is beat quickly, so Mahomes has to pull his eyes down when someone is open to get open or is about to get open. The right guard has a poor block in the run game, so it's a short gain, etc. And then Mahomes just doesn't trust many guys, and it's true. It's like a virus. It's infecting this MVP quarterback, and he himself, and we'll get into it a little bit, but he himself is not playing super well. And it's not to say that it's his fault. It's just that this offense right now is so dysfunctional, so just here or there. And when he says, and when Andy Reid says they're a tick off, it's like they're like a tick off every play, and that adds up to a 9-6 record. The first time the Chiefs have lost 6 games in a season with Patrick Mahomes. I really didn't think we'd ever see them maybe drop that far. And I know there's the extra game this season, but 6 losses, that's in his prime is a significant thing to me. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where it's just one thing here, one thing there on the offense. And, we got plenty of questions about the specifics, but, it truly is. I'm glad you put it just as a group, because it truly was a group effort in losing this game on the offensive side.
It's mistake whack-a-mole with this team every single week.
It
is one thing popping up. You can't really address that because something else is going to pop up. You saw the frustration boiling over with Mahomes yelling at the sidelines and Kelsey spiking his helmet and Reed getting mad about Kelsey spiking his helmet. Like, this team is I don't think they quite can put their finger on what's wrong and how to fix it.
I know, and that's why Andy that's what he's trying to. Andy's not going to give you much anyway, but there's only so much he can say right now. Like, what else is he supposed to say? Like, hey, if we're not executing, there's just nothing else. There's not much. Dropping passes, fumbles, penalties. Like, there's only so much a coach can say in front of the media that's gonna change anything. And really, it's not going to change much. But you also mentioned the special teams. Harrison Butker missing a field goal. Tommy Townsend shanked the punt at a bad spot in the game. He stood
Real
there
bad.
with his head over his hand, or his hands over his head, for like a legit 15-20 seconds. He just stood there shocked, and it really did encapsulate the game. And you did put the coaching too, which we'll get into more. We have questions about specific coaching things, but I really was not a fan of some of the play calls. It worked at times, but specifically on the first scoop and score, Stags, they just scored a touchdown with a direct snap handoff to Pacheco, and it worked great. Awesome play. It was super impressive. The next time they're on offense, they run a direct snap to Pacheco again, but now they're backed up in their own territory, and pressure. All it happens is pressure just kind of scares Pacheco, and he tries to pull it to save the play, and it ends up in a fumble, because it was supposed to be a handoff to Mahomes, who then rolled back out right and threw it right. It was supposed to be a design rollout, and it would have worked. Kelsey was going to be wide open. So it's one of those things where it's like, I like the play design, maybe not right there, maybe not in that moment. They just saw you run a direct snap to Pacheco, and there is something too, like the defensive line. Like, there's not much cadence. There's probably not much. It's probably a pretty simple cadence when the running back is the one calling the play, right? Like, there is probably something to, D-line be able to penetrate easier in that kind of play, especially if they just saw them do it the play before they were on the field. So I had a problem with that, but we'll get into more specifics as we get into it.
Yeah, that was a mess. And yeah, I could see how you'd run the same look two different ways and have some success the second time around. Like, if they just saw Pacheco run it, the second time Mahomes gets the ball back, right?
Yeah.
But save that for the next red zone trip.
Right. Later in the game.
Yeah. There was no reason for that at all. That made no sense. There was also they seemed to be running kind of those screen passes to receivers right into the teeth of what the defense was anticipating. Those charts that show the distribution of passes from Mahomes, it was pretty ugly this week, right? Like, everything was at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and you do get that to an extent with the Chiefs offense when you're seeing a lot of too high, and they're not allowing you to get vertical down the field, and they're not allowing you to find space, kind of in the intermediate game, because they're clouding it up. I get when that happens, but the Raiders were flying to the line of scrimmage all game. They were abandoning the vertical planes of the field, and it's because they have no worry about MVS and Justin Watson getting behind them. They have no worry about this offense trying to beat them vertically. Mahomes only completed one pass down the field. It was that Richie James 45-yard pass, which Richie James was just wide open. Great play, awesome. But this Raiders defense had no worries at all. And that's the thing with when you mention the screen passes. It's like, how are you continuing to run those when they're flying to the line of scrimmage and taking them away? There was one that popped. Kelsey popped one. But then we had the Clyde screen, right? One of the best plays of the game. Gets them deep into the goal into a goal to go situation. And then we run two consecutive wide receiver screens to Travis Kelsey. The first one incomplete, and then we just do it again to the other side. Actually gets bobbled this time, but gets corralled. That drove me crazy. And now it's 3rd and goal. You didn't throw into the end zone. You didn't even try to do anything besides the same stuff. And in the red zone, it's even harder to run one of those, because the defenders are all right there. There's no deep half to take them to.
Yeah, I mean, is there something that you could show them that look and then sort of fake off of that, right? Like, is there other, if you know that that's what they're going to be keying on, is there something you can play off of that and use a little bit of creativity? But yeah, he's got to be able to throw the ball down the field. There was another tweet that I thought was really insightful that I saw, and I'd love to give it credit, but I don't remember who it was. But Mahomes really hasn't been throwing in rhythm to the design reads. Every single play feels like a scramble, a fire drill. And Mahomes is good at that to some extent, but it can't be every play. Like, this offense has got to find some way to execute play in, play out, in rhythm, the way it's designed to go, and then save those scramble drills for when you need them.
Right, exactly. And it always whenever you see a Mahomes big rushing game like these 53 yards he had, it always coincides with a game that either they need it the most, right, like a big playoff game or like a big game, because he's not ever wasting a play. So if it's not there, he's finding yardage, he's going positive, or it's one of his most inefficient games, and this one falls into that category, because whether it was the pressure, whether it was the receivers not getting open, whether it was the play calling not necessarily manufacturing open receivers, he was not. And there were absolutely times where he was just missing the throws himself. But in terms of the scrambling thing, it just seemed like he was not comfortable at all. And it got more and more uncomfortable as the game went on. The Raiders only blitzed Mahomes 3 times throughout the game. And so that's pretty reminiscent of that Bengals game plan, right? Where they and the Raiders did have times where they only rushed 3, dropped 8 into coverage, really clouded up that that short area of the field, and that's where you saw Mahomes have to kind of manufacture it himself. That's the kind of stuff that makes you think of the 2021 AFC Championship and how he can get into his own head when he doesn't trust the receivers as much to catch between tight windows and in short areas, or he doesn't trust the pass protection to hold up against 3-man rush, because unfortunately Wanya Morris did give up some pressures when it was just 3 guys. He allowed around the outside. Mahomes was not comfortable with his blind side all game. There's just a lot of stuff, man. There is a lot of stuff, but it all comes down to the fact that the pass offense really truly is just not threatening a defense down the field. Like, I really feel like that is the core of it, that this pass offense, whether it's the pass protection, whether it's the receivers, cannot threaten downfield, and defenses are selling out because they don't feel threatened at all.
Yeah, did you have anything else from the Insta breakdown this week that you wanted to share? This is
well, we didn't talk much about the defense, so maybe we should, sit here for a second, talk about the positivity, talk about maybe the details of how the defense played, because, early on, Chris Jones was unblockable. I thought at first we were going to see a 3-4 sack game from him, because it seemed like every time Aiden O'Connell wanted to drop back or in a play action, Chris Jones was winning through the line. The defensive line, the pass rush was just relentless, especially, once, the game kind of settled in at first I should say, but once the game settled in and the Raiders had a 10-point lead, that's tough for the defense, right? They didn't even give up the 10-point lead, but now all of a sudden they're playing from behind. The Raiders can run the ball. They can kind of play, kind of dictate the script a little bit, the game script. They're not having to play from behind. And so I think that did take away from the team's ability to get pass rush, even though it looked like they were primed for a big day. I think if the offense would have played a little better and put the Raiders in a hole, you would have seen a huge game from the pass rush. But still, 2 sacks, a lot of pressure on Aiden O'Connell. And how about L'Jarius Sneed? You already mentioned the Devontae Adams thing, but man, I don't know. He just keeps shutting it down. I don't know. It is pretty ridiculous. So I do think the pass defense being elite, only allowing 48 net yards is definitely worth pointing out. I mean, that's how this team. If this team wants to make a run, still, I think we all know it's the defense and doing stuff like that that's going to do it.
48 net yards is insane. Not completing a pass after the first quarter is,
ridiculous.
And heading into that final drive, they were under 100 total yards, I think, or well under 200 total yards as an offense. The Raiders were, and then all of a sudden, again, end of game, they had to have it. Zimmer White breaks off a couple of big runs, and the game's over.
Yeah.
At that point, the defense kind of probably is a little exhausted, a little demoralized, whatever. Right. But yeah, really, you can't fault this defense at all for what they were able to do against the Raiders this week. And yeah, really encouraging stuff from Sneed. Sneed got hurt, came right back in and played later. Never missed a beat against Devontae Adams, and that was really, really fun to see. Chris Jones had 3 quarterback hits. He definitely was consistently getting home. There's some good stuff there. I like the tackle for loss from Mike Pennell. I feel like he's been a pretty positive influence the last 2 weeks against the run. This is a guy who was part of the, remember the MV Pennell talk years ago when he was part of that Super Bowl run, and that was part of what he did was just came in and solidified that run defense. Again, the stats, if you look at them now, aren't that impressive on the run defense, but But prior to that final drive, they had shut everything down.
Yeah, and it is worth pointing out on that play, the big touchdown run that really felt like it was a nail in the coffin for sure. Or not touchdown run, excuse me, just a 42-yard run by Zamir White, like you mentioned. It is worth noting that Nick Bolton had a chance. He definitely had a chance to shoot the gap, make the tackle, and definitely wasn't the greatest play on his part, and that's discouraging a little bit, just in terms of it's the game, it's the moment. You want to make that play, but you mentioned it, like you can't. It's hard to say, all right, defense, you got to make that play when they made every play after play after play throughout the entire game. And this it is unfair to put it too much on them, but they did have a chance to give the offense back the ball. The Raiders got the ball back with what, 3 minutes left. I think it was just under 3 minutes, because I was getting driven crazy by the Chiefs' time management in their touchdown drive. I think they could have given themselves a little more time if we saw a little better time management, better play calling from the Chiefs on that last touchdown drive. But yeah, I think it's just hard to. Again, Nick Bolton had a chance to make a play. That is a fact. He definitely could have shot the gap harder and tripped up Zamir White before he got through the hole and made the 45-yard run. But again, for the most part, the defense was locking down and holding the Raiders down.
Well, not that we need it this week, but Ron's new segment about being a party pooper. What do you got for us this week as far as something that we haven't even talked that much about yet? That was a big problem.
Yeah, no, we talked about Wanya Morris a little bit, right? As a rookie left tackle, being on the Mahomes blind side, that is absolutely going to be something that maybe was a little overlooked when he first took over for Donovan Smith. Hey, no matter how good or bad Donovan Smith was doing, he is still a veteran. He is still someone that has played in this league long enough, and a lot of times this year the pass protection has been pretty good, but it was not good against the Raiders, and it was a lot of Wanya, but it wasn't just him. You saw Jawan Taylor give up some edge pressure as well. And man, it is getting to a point where, he is not performing up to that contract, even if you try to take away the penalties. He is not, necessarily. And I do think I have confidence that he is still someone that can grow and be a better player, further on into his contract. But it's just, right now, I think the edge protection is not very good. I think Mahomes feels very uncomfortable with his edge protection, his edge pass protection. And then at the same time, it's starting to get highlighted a little bit. Trey Smith is just kind of an inconsistent blocker at times, but it's not the one-on-one stuff. I really think it's when defenses do the pass rush stunts, really the twists and just kind of move around. It just seems like, Trey can be late to stuff, and that's going to hurt a rookie left tackle as well. So you're talking about, a few kind of soft spots in the pass protection, two of them being on the line, or on the edges of the line, excuse me, and kind of really, protecting Mahomes' pocket and giving him, comfort and stepping up into his throws. It is a little concerning that, we're sitting here and, people got a little too comfortable, I should say. And I am one of them as well. I should speak about myself. With Wanya Morris, again, a rookie. He was a 3rd-round pick. He was projected to be a day 2, day 3, late day 2, early day 3 kind of pick. Not someone that you expected to start right away at left tackle. And that's one thing for me is in the training camp, in the preseason, I definitely thought he looked much more comfortable as a right tackle. And that's because he played right tackle in his final 2 years in college. He played left tackle his first 2 years in college. He has experience at both, but I do think the left tackle thing's a little harder to get down. It's something that he is switching from playing right tackle the last 2 seasons. And so it's not like a long-term thing that we need to worry about. It's just, hey, we have a rookie left tackle who wasn't even a day 1 pick protecting Mahomes' blindside. Like, just that's all you need to say. It has nothing to do with Wanya. Just that is an issue, and that is not going to just go away when they play the Ravens. And when they play, the Ravens, my God, their pass rush is going to, really give it, if they were to match up, the Browns, Myles Garrett, are you kidding me? And some of those stuff they can do. That's where, this is a party pooper kind of thing, because they have actually been able to mask it pretty good. But it's a game like the Raiders where a Max Crosby type of player is in there and wreaks havoc, but he wasn't even the one who had 3 sacks. It was a Malcolm Kuntz who had 6 sacks in 3 seasons coming into this game. Malcolm Kuntz. That's, his middle name. Mahomes and I think Stags, you can speak to this too, but I do think once the pass protection shows its kind of weaknesses like this, it can play into Mahomes's psyche, his mentality as a player. And haven't we seen that? We've seen that before at times in his career.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions on that topic, so let's tell you what. Let's get to break, and we'll come back and get to your questions. And there's a lot of them, as there always are after a loss. Plenty of things to dive into about the rest of this season and even into next season. We'll head into break with our usual game here.
Yes.
What NFL player am I? Ron, feeling confident this week?
I'm stumping you, Stags. I'm stumping you. I'm tired of throwing you softballs. So here we go. What NFL player am I? I played for the Chiefs and the Bengals, who are the Chiefs' upcoming opponent. I started my career in Cincy, but I finished it in Kansas City. I was a big boy and became a fan favorite, but never had more than a sack or 4 tackles for losses in my career with the Chiefs. Who am I, Stags? Let me know on the other side of the break.
And we're back on the Out of Structure podcast. Thank you for sticking with us on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. We appreciate all your questions. We've got lots of them to get to. But first, Ron, you may have stumped me this week on the what NFL player am I, someone who played for both the Chiefs and the Bengals. You said it's a defensive player that started their career with the Bengals, finished with the Chiefs, and never had more than a sack and 4 tackles for losses.
But a fan favorite, definitely a guy known in Kansas City.
So at first I couldn't think of a single player that started their career with the Bengals that finished with the Chiefs. And then it just hit me. Could it be Carlos Dunlap?
That's what I was leading you to. That's who I was baiting. That was the bait on the rod right there. But Dunlap did have a more productive time in Kansas City than that. So he gets a little more credit than that. No, this is Sean Smith, big Sean Smith, defensive tackle. He played for the Browns too, and maybe more known for that. But he was a Bengal, did start his career with the Bengals, had a few years there, and then finished here in Kansas City and only had a couple of years here, didn't do much, but just it seems like he is known in Chiefs lore. We all love the big guy, big defensive tackle, played 3 years here. So
somebody
Sean Smith.
That's somebody who just grabs life by the balls and really seems to enjoy it.
Stags. Exactly. That's why and honestly, I could have put that in the hint. I could have gave you a little. Oh
yeah, that would have been over. All right. Well, let's start with your questions. Let's start with the coaching staff. We have a handful of questions about Chiefs offensive coordinator Matt Nagy. Dominic Jasper, is Matt Nagy the problem with the offense? Heidi Yeager, I call it Yeager. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing that or not, but I like it that way. Is Nagy causing the offense to suck? Max Power, more subtly, why does the offense strangely resemble the Bears of a few years back? And Captain Video, how much of this is on Nagy? Will Reed take play calling back if he doesn't, if he hasn't already? This looks like a train wreck with no happy ending. All right, so we've talked before about the coaching staff, about how it's pretty hard to isolate, what's going on from one coach to the other. The Chiefs definitely have a team approach when it comes to the offense. They have guys who help with game planning, guys help with in-game play calling. Andy Reid obviously always has a pretty heavy hand in there. How much do you think it's Nagy?
So the thing here is that, and it's something that I feel like maybe, did I miss a meeting where Chiefs fans just all agreed that this report was a lie, that in 2017, Andy Reid handed over play calling duties to Matt Nagy during that stretch of the season? That happened. Unless we all agree, unless we just think that was a lie, and just to get him the promotion, which, hey, that's fair to you if you want to push that. But my thing is that, and now he wasn't even the offensive coordinator then. He was the quarterback's coach, or just a pass game analyst. My thing is that I do think there's times, or depending on games or stretches of the season, where maybe one guy is maybe giving their input a little more than any of the other guys, and Andy's kind of directing that, right? Like, hey, and that's probably happened with Bieniemy at times in the past, where hey, I'm going to let Bieniemy kind of maybe dictate the flow of the game, maybe in between the 20s, or maybe maybe on third downs or in the red zone, something like that. I do think there is something to that. I mean, I bring that 2017 part up because I think it is fair to say that, like, it's not just Andy Reid calling the plays. Like, I think people just say that and like, why would it's Andy's obviously has I don't think it's not as easy as that to me, in my opinion. I think there are times where Reid relinquishes the reins to an extent, and gives his coaches a chance to prove themselves as play callers, and or maybe just switch up the tendencies, so the defense doesn't. I think there is something to that. So I don't know. First of all, I'll throw it back to you and see what your reaction is to that.
So let's talk about that 2017. After some extensive research, they made that change right before they played the Jets in December. And according to NFL Network, the Chiefs had averaged almost 33 points a game for the first 5 games. Then they dropped down to 18 points a game for the next 6 games and fell to 6-5 on the year. They had scored 10 points or less in back-to-back games before handing over the play calling to Matt Nagy. So they had a lot of big plays early on, and then a bunch of checkdowns, and really not able to take advantage of the situation. And then here's the narrative on that first game after they handed it over. Let's see. The Chiefs had poor discipline and sloppy play on offense, and the Jets won 38-31.
That was a crazy game. Alex went off, a bunch of deep touchdowns, but yeah, we had a bunch of penalties. I remember that game.
Yeah. So yeah, there was two big Tyreek Hill touchdowns, 2 Travis Kelce touchdowns. So I don't know. I just found it interesting, maybe some a little bit of parallels there, that in that scenario the Chiefs offense had stalled, and then they came back to this idea that Nagy was going to call the plays, and then it immediately was a sloppy game and ended in a loss. I don't know. Maybe it's a coincidence. But.
Well, and they did score 31 points, so you could even flip it and say Nagy got the offense going. But no, I think I guess my point being is just that this year, I think there's a case to be made that, maybe there's times where, Andy Reid is more so calling the plays. And there are maybe times or stretches where Nagy is more so calling the plays because he is the offensive coordinator. He has been a head coach in this league, even if he failed. Andy Reid sees this as a guy that has, he trusts and thinks highly of. But to Max Power's question, why does the offense strangely resemble the Bears of a few years back? This game specifically really did feel like it had like Nagy written all over it, and that Nagy maybe was, and this is pure speculation. I understand I could be completely wrong, because I think it's fair. It's been pointed out on Twitter, and it's a fair thing to point out to me, is that Nagy's offense is Andy Reid's offense. So saying that Nagy is calling the play, like it's the same offense. Like, it's not a different playbook when Nagy is calling the plays, but there are tendencies. There are things that go into calling the plays, the rhythm of the game, the flow of the game. I think you can tell. I think Andy is better at it than people give him credit for. And I don't think Nagy is very good at it. And that's what I think you saw on Monday, honestly. I really do think that situational stuff. We talked about the Pacheco direct snap backed up. Talked about the red zone quick screens. Like, I know Andy does that at times, but I don't know, man. That feels Nagy as heck to me. It really does. It really, really does. And you saw those kind of games in Chicago, but he did have Mitch Trubisky. So it's like, okay, it's fair. Like, you can only do so much when your quarterback is limited to that fashion. But you do not have a limited quarterback here. And so to me, I do think there is legitimacy to the fact that Nagy is maybe just not. I think he's way better on the whiteboard. I think he's way better, like, coming up with stuff and coming up with design and scheme than he is at implementing it in the flow of the game. I really feel like there's something to that. And, I'm not saying I'm not saying that's, or, I don't know if it's going to go back and forth. I don't know if, this is all speculation. I am just telling you that it just felt to me like I was watching Matt Nagy. Like it felt more Matt Nagy in this game. I don't know. Did you have any inkling of that? Did that cross your mind at all?
Yeah, it didn't really. I mean, I know a lot of people pointed that out, so I'll defer there. But Nagy's presided over some successful offenses as well as some unsuccessful ones. That Bears team actually, as much as people want to criticize, the Bears team actually improved under his tutelage. It didn't end well, but he had that team on the verge of being pretty good. So I don't know. I still believe the reports that he might even be Andy Reid's successor here. So don't get too excited about them moving on from him or identifying him as the problem and booting him out. I don't know that the Chiefs see it that way. However we see it.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, Nagy has been with Andy Reid a very long time. There are things that, Reid trusts with him that there's nothing we can quantify about that. And to me, it just feels like he might just be a better quarterback coach and play schemer, designer, I just feel like maybe this is hey, this is me just all speculation again, people. Like I'm just, being again, we are fans just as much as we are analysts. I know people, we're just fans that like to do this in a lot of the time, right? Just talk about it. So to me, it just feels like there is something to the fact that, when Nagy, is maybe, I should just say it like this. I just really feel like Nagy is a better quarterback coach, better play. I know I just said that, but play scheme designer. I just feel like maybe he got elevated too quickly to being a head coach, to being in charge of stuff. He is a younger guy. And so I think there is something to, he is still, and I said this before, right, Sags, you've heard me say it, I do think he's a little more buddy with Mahomes than he is like a coach and like a disciplinarian authority over him, which I'm not saying anyone needs to be like a dictator. But Bieniemy, I don't think ever was buddy with Mahomes, and maybe that brings the best out of Mahomes. That and maybe and it's all speculation again, but maybe we just can't see that with Nagy. And there's pros and cons to each coaching style, but that's just one of the cons of Nagy's coaching style is that he doesn't maybe have the same kind of fire to bring it out of Mahomes like Bieniemy did. Because those spats on the sideline we saw between Mahomes and EB, I think sometimes it was pretty productive. It ended up, getting Mahomes locked in and getting it turned on. So
what I will say about the coaching staff is I think there's this trend or this tendency for NFL head coaches to bring in their guys, right, and stick with their guys. Reid is as guilty or more guilty of that than just about anybody else. When he has tried to reach outside that, zone, I think you get good results whenever you bring in some outside voices sometimes. So if there were to be a change in the offseason, I would love for them to bring in some, some outside voice that they don't have a lot of direct experience in. Maybe it's Cliff Kingsbury. Maybe it's, could be anybody, right? On defense, this is not quite the same parallel, but this week you saw the success of Antonio Pierce as the head coach of the Raiders. He's somebody that the Chiefs tried to bring in as a linebacker coach in recent years. That would be an example of an outside voice coming in that really can make a big change. And I think he's made a big change in Oakland or in Las Vegas or wherever the hell the Raiders are now. And I think that team, is going to benefit from his perspective. And I think the Chiefs coaching staff could probably use a little, not a major shakeup, but maybe a little bit different perspective this offseason, ideally. Now, I do want to move on because when you talk about the Chiefs and you say, why is this team a favorite to win the Super Bowl every year? It's coaching, which we just covered, and it's quarterback. So we have a couple of questions here about Patrick Mahomes. Jay at Enigmatic Story 8 on Twitter. How much blame does Mahomes have on today's loss? And Chris Schmutz, they're clearly joking, I hope, asking when the Chiefs are going to cut Patrick Mahomes. I saw some other comments that, this is this was a game at least where Oh yeah, somebody on Twitter said that the Chiefs would have won easily if Baker Mayfield had been their quarterback as opposed to Patrick Mahomes. That's a little bit of recency bias, obviously. But how much of this is on the MVP versus the rest of the team?
Yeah, I mean, I know I said it earlier, but it just really feels like the virus that is the lack of a supporting cast in the receiver room, the falling apart pass protection that's kind of just seems to be getting worse and worse as the season has worn on, and even some of the kind of the lack of detail stuff that we talked about, the no huddle rehuddle stuff. I mean, I think that is all kind of just infecting him to a point where it is affecting his play and making him not play as well. Like, you see some of these missed throws. I saw a few missed throws from him, including one to Kelsey where, I know people that saw it on Twitter, I know it does look like him and Watson and Kelsey are kind of almost in the same space running into each other. You could say, well, he was trying to, make Kelsey sit on this route. Well, the reason Watson was anywhere near Kelsey was because he got held up. It did get flagged for holding, but it was a typical crosser. Mahomes and Kelsey do it all the time. Kelsey makes a move at the top of his route and busts across the field. He's sprinting to get away from the guy that is in man coverage against him. And yeah, Mahomes just puts it. It's as bad as it's as behind of a throw as I've ever seen thrown to Kelsey on that crosser. And it was wet conditions, right? I do want to say that, it was, pretty drizzly. It was cold, but Mahomes usually is pretty good in the weather conditions. So I don't know. To me, it's not like I'm saying it, it's Mahomes' fault that the offense doesn't look good. But Mahomes is not overcoming the staff to he is doing it to an extent, in terms of, I mean, they did score 2 touchdowns this week. And if the defense does get that stop at the end, who knows, maybe Mahomes pulls it out of the hat. But it just feels like, to me, that was one of his worst performances, but it's not because he is just not he's just all of a sudden not as good as he used to be. It's because this offense is really taking a toll on him mentally. He is not comfortable with the pass protection. He is not comfortable with the timing of the receivers. There's so many times it feels like the route where he is throwing it and where the route ends up is just not the same thing. Man, there's a lot of stuff, man. So it's not necessarily on Mahomes, but he did have one of his worst performances of the season individually, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to that, the mental side of the game. Mahomes is so good mentally and physically, obviously, but there's been times in his career when he has struggled. And in each of those times, it is because, at least to our estimation, it's been because he didn't trust the pass protection and he didn't trust his receivers. So it makes him doubt what he's seeing. It makes him hesitate to take longer. It makes him scramble around when he doesn't need to scramble around. Those are some signs that he is not comfortable and that he's not trusting his eyes, not trusting his gut, on the field. That hesitation, that indecisiveness, that's when he looks bad. And when he's decisive, when he's on time, when he's in rhythm, making plays, that's the Mahomes that we know and love. This is not the Mahomes we know and love. And it has to do, I think, with confidence. And I do think he's been rattled a little bit more this year. You saw him going off on the offensive line this week. You saw him yelling on the sidelines last week. This is somebody who's clearly frustrated with this offense in a number of different ways. He's barking at receivers, for not coming back to the ball or not, catching the ball when it hits them in the hands. I mean, it's not wrong. It's not, I would say, a problem. They're certainly not going to cut or bench Mahomes. There's still nobody you'd rather have back there. But he cannot do it alone, and he certainly can't do it alone or with the team if he doesn't have the confidence of the guys around him. So I don't know what it takes to you can't just build that confidence overnight. We had hoped that would build over the season. But I don't know how you go forward from here, but you just have to hope that they start to get on a roll at some point.
Yeah, and this could have been my party pooper segment because I think you just hit it right there, is that I don't think that confidence or, I don't think whatever has affected him is repairable this season. I really don't. I really feel like we're going to see some of the same stuff pop up through the end of the season, and we will have to see them fix it in the offseason, and next season he'll maybe come back with a better. But I really feel like that's the case. I really do. I believe that. So,
well, let's talk about the offensive line, because a lot of that is where it starts. Is does he trust the guys in front of him? I think we've established in your section earlier and throughout that he doesn't. Russ A says he would definitely take those golf carts back. I saw a meme out there of golf carts with those yellow parking boots on them. Like there's
getting repoed.
Yeah. There's a couple questions here about why didn't the coaching staff give the offensive line more help? Maybe an extra tight end or, some max protect type situations. Did you see anything schematically that could have been done this week?
Honestly, to me, I feel like for the most part, there were times they were giving them the extra help. Wanye was definitely left on an island at times, but you got to Wanye was going against, he wasn't going against a big name guy. Max Crosby a lot of time lines up on the right side of the offensive formation. And so this Malcolm Kuntz guy wasn't someone maybe that they felt like they needed to, truly, help him out with a ton. And it's something that they really have to juggle because they need to get more guys out in the route to help get guys open. Because the less people that are out in the route, the easier it is to cover and the harder it is for receivers to get open. So I think it's a really hard balance. I feel like this week there were plenty of times Kelsey stayed in for a second to chip, and that sucks because then Kelsey's not out on a route. So it was a tough kind of balance. I don't think they really do struggle with that. And so I don't think that was like the easy answer solution this week. I think they did that enough.
Yep. I think you covered that pretty well. JC Proctor, do we really need Trey Smith and Joe Thuney back? I mean, the offensive line is going to have a lot of decisions to be made in this offseason or the next couple of off seasons. You've got Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey contracts coming up at some point. Joe Thuney's contract is massive, and I think he's got an out coming up. This interior of this offensive line is supposed to be the best in the NFL. It should be the best in the NFL at this point. It has not been this season, I don't think. Each of those guys has struggled at different times. But can you really afford to completely rebuild the offensive line again this offseason? I don't think you can.
The one thing I can say, though, is the guard position historically in Andy Reid's offense has always been a low invested position and one that they can get away with kind of maybe not having the best player at. They've done it plenty of times throughout the Andy Reid era. This part of it has not been the case, right? We have really good players, we think, at the guard position. But, if this team really wants to get serious about surrounding Mahomes with weapons, they may have to sacrifice Thuney's contract, which does have another year on it. I don't think they'd trade Trey Smith, but you just may not let him. You just may not sign him. You just may not sign him after next year, and you save that money. So you do have cap room for a receiver for another skill position, right?
Just looking at Spot Track, there's not much that could be done this coming off season. Joe Thuney has a $26 million cap hit in 2024, $22 million of dead money if they were to let him go.
Man, so I didn't realize that. Well, yeah, there's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do with Joe Thuney in 2024. Now, in 2025, Thuney's contract again a $26 million cap hit, but $11 million in dead money. You're saving $15 million there in 2025. Maybe that's the year where you can actually make a decision. 2024.
I thought this was his up. I thought 2024 was his fourth year. Did he sign an extension?
They restructured. There was a restructure along the way. I think it was part of it. Jawan Taylor can't do anything with his contract in 2024. His dead money exceeds his cap number. So Creed Humphrey, obviously Creed and Trey Smith will be going into the last year of their contract.
Yeah.
They're going to be very, very cheap in 2024. Maybe the next offensive line rebuild conversation happens in 2025. And for now, the Chiefs have to figure out how to get the most out of the guys that they have and solve the left tackle position, whether it's Wanye or somebody else. Maybe next year we do see Wanye and Taylor flip. as we thought they were going to be going into this season. Taylor at left tackle, Wanye at right tackle. Maybe there's some things like that, but it can't be done in season. It has to be after the season, and you can't really do much personnel-wise in 2024. To me, it looks like the 2024 season personnel-wise should be based around the wide receiver room. That should be the focus of the rebuild. The offensive line, they've just got to coach them up, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I think the skill position group in general. I think it'd be nice to see them have a little more, a little more depth at the running back and tight end position. Even if that is, not the biggest investment, just maybe someone more, more effective than what they've had this year.
Yeah, let's talk about wide receivers then. We've got lots of questions here, and a couple of them looking back. Breezy on Twitter. I remember preseason when the Chiefs fan says we need to keep 8 wide receivers. We have so much talent. I was guilty of that, and I think a lot of us were to say, hey,
oh yeah,
they have a lot of options here. None of them are slam dunks, but some of these guys are going to hit, right? Some of these guys are going to hit, and frankly, one of them has hit big time.
Yes.
Yes. Is Richie James coming on now? Maybe he had a big play this week. Not a high volume guy yet, but maybe he's coming around. Kerry Kaberga says, was Pete Sweeney wrong about the wide receiver room not being a problem? Again, we're looking back to preseason and saying, hey, what did we think about this room versus what did it turn into?
Well, I to be fair to Kerry, I do think Pete has been on record recently talking about, they have enough in the receiver room. I do think he changed his tune. And I think after this last game, it does feel like, and it's because I think that's one thing we kind of maybe buried the lead here is that, the doom and gloom does feel like it's really happening because they really are out of they can't get the 1 seed anymore. It kind of the entire time it's like, well, if they still have the 1 seed, like, it doesn't matter how well they played. So that's kind of the preface, but no, I think we were all wrong. I think a lot of us were wrong because we trusted this team, this organization to surround Mahomes with an appropriate amount of talent.
Because they did it last year.
Right. And it's largely the same group.
Virtually the same group. Did it last year. You could say Rashee Rice is now better than Juju Smith-Schuster was last year, or at least as good production-wise. I mean, I'm sure there's some nuance to how Juju Smith-Schuster plays the game that Rashee Rice hasn't yet learned. But, all things equal, where we got ourselves in trouble was hoping that guys would take a step. We've been hoping that MVS would take a step since the day he was signed in Kansas City.
Right.
MVS is exactly who he has been his entire career, having actually a down year probably. But last year he was exactly what he's been his entire career. We were hoping that Sky Moore would take a big step forward. He may have taken a step back. So that's and we hoped that Kadarius Toney was the number 1 receiver type that was going to put up big numbers in this offense, and that has not been the case either. So those 3 guys, I think you get yourself in trouble when you project growth and it doesn't work out. They had a lot of options this offseason. Those options have dwindled now with Sky Moore being on IR, with McCole Hardman, not quite being healthy. Not that he was an offseason option, but he was an in-season option. And then just really, to me, it all comes down to the lack of development of Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney that has doomed this room for this season. You can't fix that. They're not. They didn't take a step forward. You hope that they would. The fact that MVS is still the leading snap getter for this offense, is mind-boggling given his lack of production. I wonder if that's just a desperate attempt to say, hey, maybe we can still get him going. Maybe we can still get MVS back to what he was last year. But the hope is the part that is not panned out as well as we thought.
Well, and to get into Jesse Epperson's question, Moore, MVS, and Toney are obviously useless. Why aren't Justin Ross, Richie James, and Rashee Rice getting more targets? Rice is getting plenty of targets. That's I don't think we need to worry about that. And yeah, exactly. And that's and that's a good point because it's not like that's not a bad thing on his part. It's just that we're putting way too much on a rookie receiver early, and you're going to see maybe some of the inefficiency, like a 6 for 12 at times, because there are things that a rookie is going to, kind of not be able to catch up with right away. The dude also asked, why isn't Justin Ross getting more targets? Even Roma was pointing him out as on his small number of snaps. Can everyone else see his talent other than our own coaches? Now, this Ross thing, I will say, is kind of perplexing to me. On the pick six, just because he is open, like after the ball is thrown and after the guy has the ball in his hands, doesn't mean he was open on the play and Mahomes should have thrown it to him. It was a really good play on the corner's part. He really bailed and showed like he was going to take away Ross, and that's why you saw Mahomes throw it so quickly to the short, because the cornerback really did a good job presenting like he was gaining depth and going to take away the corner route Ross was running. Of course, it's going to look like he had plenty of space open as on a corner route once the guy is breaking on the pass and intercepting it. So that's a whole nother thing, but I do think. They do. He does need to eat into MVS's snaps. He does need to eat into Justin Watson's snaps. I know he doesn't have the same vertical downfield ability they do, but he has the contested catch ability they don't have that could still work down the field. So I absolutely think he needs to get more opportunity.
I would agree with that. And again, kind of going back to my previous point is you can't continuously just hope that you're going to get more out of MVS. You got to shake stuff up. The dude also threw out there, is having MVS on the field considered malpractice at this point? I think it's borderline. It really is. And I'm not one to call for somebody's benching, but if I'm that coaching staff, if he's not inactive, his snaps are reduced to basically zero, and he's a break glass emergency type receiver, and we're just going to try something different. It hasn't worked. Let's try something different. And it's not just going to get better by giving MVS the most snaps or the most targets. Like you've got to mix it up. I don't know if Justin Ross is that answer. He'd be a great story if it was. I'm not feeling super confident in that, but I would absolutely mix it up, and I would absolutely not play MVS at this point unless I had to.
Yeah, and I feel like this week might have just been a lot of like injury related, right? Tony all of a sudden missing the game. Sky Moore is on IR. So, there's some snaps where they just, it has to be eaten up by somebody. And guys like Justin Ross and Richie James haven't been around all season, haven't been in the flow of the offense all season. But I do hope we see Richie James get more opportunity too. He feels like, Tony, maybe a little dialed down on the playmaking aspect, but just a little turned up on the fundamentals, on the, receiver aspect of it. And that's kind of what they need right now is a Tony that's maybe not as volatile. And that's, I think, what Richie James is.
Yeah, I think Richie James has some possibilities. And we thought this coming into the season. He's a nice, reliable option. He's got, I keep saying he's got just enough wiggle that he can get some yards after catch. He can get loose a little bit. I think he is somebody that you can throw some volume to out of the slot. But Rich Testerman, I love this question. Why don't the wide receivers get open? Why can't they catch? Are they on crack? There's no evidence that they're actually on crack. But it is,
all options are open right now with how they're playing. I mean,
it is bizarre. They're either not open, or they're not catching the ball, or they're in the wrong place, or they're quitting on a route, or it's something. Yeah, I think,
this is the last thing I'll say on that, but I think it'd be more like the downer type of things. I think they'd be more like eating too many edibles or something before the game or something. Right? I think if they were doing that, we might get a better game. Honestly,
you're feeling lethargic out there as opposed to fired up. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to keep positive about a wide receiver room that has been an issue all season, from literally the first game, and you keep saying, well, they'll come together, they'll figure it out, they'll develop, they'll whatever, and it's 16 games in the season, and they have not. So the rest of the mailbag questions, or some of these, are kind of big picture here, and I don't know the right order to go through these, but let me start with the positive from at Joe Amorse on Twitter. We've accomplished more in the last 5 years than I ever would have dreamed. Sure, it's frustrating, but no team can be elite every single year. With this quarterback, will always be in games the rest of his career. The GM will find the right players. He mostly does, but sometimes the ride gets bumpy. I love the optimism here, and there's some, historical precedent for this. There have been times in this Chiefs run where things have looked terrible, and they figured it out. Corey Brake is sort of frustrating. Sorry, he's sort of struggling with this internally. How do I reconcile my frustration but still appreciating the run that they've been on? And then the Oracle is just straight up over the cliff. I'm done. The Chiefs of my past have returned. The last 5 years were a fluke. All of you Chiefs and Cubs fans know what I'm talking about. Royals fans too. There are a lot of emotions flying around for Chiefs fans at this point. How do we reconcile, to the way Corey says here, the frustration with this team, but still appreciating, the last 5 years?
You know what I'll say on this is I appreciate the frustration, because I do think when the team is winning and the team, in those seasons where it's, 2020 where they went 14-2 or whatever it was, and barely had any losses, and there's barely any adversity, that is not as fun. And I know it sounds crazy, right? But the adversity is really what makes fandom fun. Feeling the ups and downs, feeling the and this low feeling we're having now is really because we had the high lows, and we know what the high lows are, and we've gotten so used to them. But this is going to make the next high feel great, right? Like make the next time, and it's still like this team is championship material. I have been pessimistic, for a while now, so I'm going to stay pessimistic. I'm not coming off that, but this team, they're in a, they could always do something crazy, right? So appreciate the downtime, because I really do feel like it helps the good times feel even better. It's when you're the front runner, it's not as fun, I feel like.
If they do find a way to go on a run here in the playoffs, if they put it all together these last couple of weeks and then go on a run through the playoffs, it's going to be a really rewarding season to say, hey, they've been through some tough times and they fought back and figured it out and went on a run. I don't know how anybody can predict that that's going to happen at this point, given what we've seen. The trajectory is just not there. But hey, if it happens, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be fun. And if it happens, it's going to start this week against the Cincinnati Bengals, the Chiefs' old nemesis, a rivalry team, if there is still a rivalry amongst the AFC, contenders. I should put that in air quotes there. But what do you see from the Bengals in the matchup this week? And can we actually expect the Chiefs to win and actually clinch everything that not everything, but everything that's left on the table, the AFC West crown, a playoff berth, and possibly one playoff home game, not home game throughout, but they might get one. If they win this week, that's all still on the table. What do you see from this matchup that gives you confidence one way or the other?
Well, that's the thing. The Bengals are like the worst type of team, I feel like, to play right now, because this is still a rivalry. I don't, Joe Burrow is not there, but this is still largely the same team that the Chiefs beefed with, the past 2 seasons, and they would love nothing more than to spoil the Chiefs' season and to really make them panic in Week 18, playing with their backs against the wall, even if it is against the Chargers in Easton Stick. That's going to be nerve-wracking as heck if the Chiefs can't get this done on Sunday. Because the Bengals have been playing good ball with Jake Browning, man. They really have. Jake Browning almost makes you question, hey, Burrow really is set up well, right? I mean, because you're seeing a lot of the same successes that Burrow did. Obviously, Burrow is a much better quarterback, and you saw that last week when they went to Pittsburgh and got destroyed by that Steelers defense. So there's definitely a chance that happens, where this Chiefs defense pounces on a backup quarterback and Orlando Brown Jr. gets a little home cooking. but I don't know. I think this Bengals defense is going to be one to really kick the Mahomes offense while they're down. So this game is going to be a high intensity game.
Yeah, the Bengals defense has always given the Chiefs offense fits, and so I think you've got to be concerned about that. The way the Chiefs offense is played, I'd still argue if they can somehow figure out how to play a clean game, the Chiefs should win this game. But it's not going to be a cakewalk. You can't take anything for granted with the backup quarterback in on the Bengals side, and they're 8-7. I don't think they're eliminated from the playoff hunt. I mean, they're probably on the outside looking in, but they could find their way back. They've got 2 tough games left, to the Chiefs and the Browns, I believe, are the next for the Bengals. So it is they're going to have something to play for, something to prove, and there's no team that probably loves beating the Chiefs more than the Bengals outside of the division. So it is it's going to be one to watch. It's going to be nerve-wracking. It's going to be not fun at times. Hopefully they find a way to get it done and go on that playoff run. That's all we have left to hope for, that things turn around and they start executing. Otherwise, it's going to be a short season. But let's wrap up there. We appreciate you all being with us today, and we hope to be back with you next week after a Chiefs victory and clinching the AFC West for the 8th straight season. Should have done it this week. Still not too late if they can do it next week. After that, all bets are off. So let's hope for good things in the new year, in the new podcast season. We had some questions we didn't have time to get to this week. We will get to next week. A lot of those are about the off season and about New Year's. So hopefully you all have a wonderful holiday season. You enjoy the end of the 2023 year, and we'll talk to you in 2024.